Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
This is our last pre-midterm episode.
I don't know.
I'm excited.
Are you excited for the midterms? Because some days you're down, some days you're up, some days you're Reaganing, some days you're Nixoning. How you feeling?
Well, I'm a little, buzzing from Halloween candy right now. So I'm getting by. I'm getting by. Yeah.
I buy some bag of candy to hand out to people, but I used to buy a lot of candy, and then I learned no one comes to my block to trick or treat, and then I just have like an enormous amount of candy that I stuff myself on, which is great, but is not what one should do when they're 46 years old. So usually I got down to one bag of candy. This year I didn't even do that. And now I don't have any candy. I got a few pieces, walking around town with my kids downtown. But I feel like I undershot this year. Now I don't have enough candy.
I'm just waiting for the world to catch up to me and for people to be handing out, Luna bars and Michelob Ultra, on the Matkins diet. But that's never going to happen. And so anyway, here we are.
But back to my question. Are you excited about the midterms?
No.
Are you like...
I'm generally depressed and does it show, Bill? It seems like you've been able to discern through my facade of hello, Bill. I'm a little bit I'm a little down overall.
If Republicans keep the House and the Senate, does Matt feel good because the Republicans won the House and the Senate? Or does Matt want the Democrats to win at least one House so there's some check on Trump? I mean, probably not the Senate, because I know you like the judges, but would you be happy if Democrats won the House because that would put some guardrails on this thing?
Matt is numb. Matt is emotionally numb. I don't care what happens.
You just don't care.
I'm pretty numb. Look, I think that... I think you could argue it either way. I think that put aside my my ideology and all that. I think you could argue that having a House hold Trump accountable could be good for America, and I think you could argue that it would just be more division and more fighting and more investigations and impeachment, and that it could drive us further apart. I don't know what is better. To be honest with you. And I am pretty sure Republicans will hold the Senate, so I'm not worried about my judges.
Now, are there certain Democrats who are running more centrist or even center-right campaigns that you would say, I at least want that person to win? If the Democrats start moving more in that direction, that would lead to the kind of society that I want to see?
Not really. I can't think of any great Democrats that I love. I mean, was it Doug Jones down in Alabama? Was it Alabama?
Yeah.
I kind of liked the campaign he ran.
I think you'd like Phil Bredesen in Tennessee. I think you would prefer Bredesen over Marsha Blackburn, although again, judges.
Yeah. But that's interesting. I should look a little closer into that. But I know, basically wherever Taylor Swift is, you'll find me.
And I think you would be happy with Billy Sutton being governor of South Dakota.
Well, if you put aside his history as a bank robber, I think he's a fine politician.
He's running as a pro-gun fiscal conservative. He was a rodeo competitor. He got paralyzed in a rodeo accident. But he's always campaigning in his rodeo hat, and he still rides his horse. And I imagine you have no animus towards the Republican Kristi Noem, who is a congresswoman from they've won district in South Dakota. She's already won statewide before, so I'm sure she's the kind of conservative I think you generally like. But Billy Sutton is the Democrat you kind of like, I think, also. So I think that if he won there, that you might feel hopeful about the direction of the Democratic Party.
I think you've written my next column, Bill.
That's what I'm here for. I know that's why you do the show.
That's why I keep doing the show. I mean, it is the millions that we make from this, notwithstanding the the thought-provoking conversations that often lead to columns.
Now,
is a fringe benefit.
I also saw, you've been getting some knocks lately from the left because after you have said, the left wing's been acting like a mob, and you people in the media would call the Tea Party a mob, and you won't call this a mob. You said very clearly on your Twitter feed that Steve King has to go. Yeah.
I said, read my lips. No, I just wanted to weigh in. As you could imagine, knowing my politics, I have never, I've actually met Steve King. He's a nice guy. Believe it or not, my wife actually at one point was a consultant for Steve King. But knowing my politics, knowing where I've long stood on the issue of immigration, you could probably imagine that I've not been a fan of some of his comments over the years. What was the thing about the cantaloupes or something like that? Right. So, but I just wanted to go on the record, and I guess I was sort of at the beginning of a wave that ended up with a lot of prominent people, I guess, calling on him, including, is it the head of the NRCC?
Really?
I believe, and maybe even Ted Cruz.
No, I saw Cruz. I thought reconnecting with Steve King. I saw someone say that Cruz was critical of him, but maybe we can go to the tape, pull it up. Are you fact checking me live here? I was at that. I was looking at something else. I was double checking the Democrat who's running against him.
We need someone in real time. No, I think that in Iowa, there are some Republicans like Rod Blum who are in very competitive races. I think that Steve King is generally viewed as being pretty safe, but who knows now?
Well, no, there was a poll that came out where it was a 1-point race.
That close.
I mean, this is the guy who's been totally safe, won by 20 points last election, and maybe this one poll is a completely ridiculous poll. It's not going to bear out that way. But there's so little polling in most of these races, people are definitely glomming onto that one poll. It was very recent. I think I would not be surprised.
I just don't know what his deal is. I mean, wasn't he pictured with a Confederate flag on his desk or something? And then he's tweeting out support for ultra right, semi-white nationalist candidates in other countries.
Yeah, he's just straight up white nationalist. There's no, it's beyond weird. It's just he is a white nationalist. There's no debate about it at this point. He's stripped himself of all whatever wisps of nuance that were there before. He used to be more cute about it, more coy. He'd use more code words, and now he's just sort of balls out.
I just don't understand why a House of Representative member from Iowa, who, as far as I can tell, knows a good bit about the pork industry, you know what I mean? All politics is local, why he is dabbling in international politics, particularly of an unseemly sort. It's bizarre.
Why? Before I even get into that, I do want to answer that, but it's just to clarify what we were saying before. Okay. So the head of the NRCC said, "We must stand up against white supremacy and hate in all forms, and I strongly condemn this behavior."
In regards to
Steve King. So he did say that. Cruz. So Cruz's campaign spokeswoman said he made, I'm reading an article from The Week, by the way. Cruz's campaign spokeswoman said he made a personal call to King and reiterated what he told reporters in Texas earlier in the day, that King's comments have been disappointing, and he's saying and doing things that are dividing us, that are pulling us apart.
Okay. Well, that's not it's not the most moral clarity I've seen ever, but it's not nothing. For Ted Cruz to say that is disappointing is notable.
Right, but he didn't withdraw support.
Yeah.
Look, I think that what we have seen in the past couple years on these race questions from alt-right white nationalist sources, and with Trump. Look, Trump could have very easily not express sympathy for the Charlottesville alt-right protesters. That's a very easy thing to not do. And the fact that he did it, I think, suggests the power, the grip that racist attitudes have on people. If you've gone down that path in your mind, I think it's hard to function as a lucid thinking, rational person. So, I mean, you have to be really driven to want to promote.
You think that Trump is like involved in white supremacism and buys into white supremacism?
I mean, I can't know what goes on in his mind. I can't know if this is sort of deeply cynical. I'm going to send out my dog whistles to keep those people in my fold, or if he deeply believes it. But the fact that he does it at all suggests, whether it's within himself or within the people that are behind him, they think that stuff is so important that he has to nod towards it. And if you're Steve King, you can sit fat and happy being the congressman from Iowa 4 and not travel the world promoting white nationalism. And the fact that you think it's important. This is, a month before your election. Like, why are you doing this now of all times? To do it suggests this is really important to you. This is the thing that if I lose my race, I'm still going to do this because this is what drives me.
The weird thing about it is that, and this is like maybe the banality of evil or something. I don't know, but like the weird thing about it, I've met Steve King a handful of times. Actually at like fiscal conservative events, nothing to do with even social conservative stuff, and seems like a nice, like sort of happy-go-lucky guy. I mean, like, you would assume that someone who has these beliefs would be angry and evil and just sort of viscerally repellent, and that's not the vibe. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing. Well, so to me, I find it. Look, I guess I keep using the word weird because that's kind of like I'm flummoxed by what he's up to.
Because I mean, you operate in the realm of rationality, and I think these folks don't.
I try. I tried.
I mean, I think once you are
it's getting harder. I'm sorry, Rob. I am my sort of morose attitude. I just think that from the time Republicans nominated Trump, the time Trump was elected, he has ushered in this battle, and it's impossible to sort of. He has dominated every news cycle, basically, the topic of conversation. He has set the parameters of the debate, of the teams, of the sides, of the tribes, and has forced this almost existential battle between the left versus the right, and I'm talking about the extreme left versus the extreme right, and this battle with the media. And I am in the middle of all of it. I'm in the middle of all of it. Whether I am the mainstream media, and I'm also a conservative. It's a conflict. I'm a conservative who wants to defend conservative ideas and values against liberal media bias, but at the same time, I'm very worried about Trump's attacks on this institution that holds people accountable. I mean, I'm in the in the middle of like this hurricane that Trump has started.
But I think to that point that Trump has sparked this. I mean, so if you're a white nationalist, if you're a white supremacist,
let's say I'm not, but if you were,
like this is your time. Like this is the time to shine. This is the time you can crawl up from under your rock. knowing that there are people out there who think like me, who want to work towards our vision of a white state. So if you're not going to be loud and proud now, when are you going to do it? So even if you're a Steve King, who, he's not just some guy in his basement, ranting on the internet. This is your time to shine. If you're not going to push these things now, when are you going to do it?
I think the internet started this probably by allowing people who had fringe viewpoints to find each other. I mean, just the other day, I don't know if these people are white supremacists or white nationalists or just fringe right wingers, but like, did you see this story about the this kid who tried to like set up Robert Mueller and say that Robert Mueller had been a sexual harasser in the 70s or something?
A friend of mine, a neighbor of mine, was one of the people who was contacted by this operation. She's been on TV for Jennifer Taub, and Jennifer Taub is someone who has been very active on social media as a critic of Trump, and she was one of the organizers of the tax march a few months after Trump's inauguration. She tweets and Facebook posts about the Mueller investigation all the time. This is the last person you would approach to try to turn on Mueller and expose him. So the fact that she was approached just shows how juvenile and out this operation was.
As Jonah Goldberg tweeted, I'm looking forward to the I, Tonya movie about like what a debacle and what a rookie sort of move this was. But look, again, I don't know if this kid, like, I don't want to call him a white nationalist. I don't know where he stands on that. But my point is that there are like all of these kind of people that I've never heard of before. And all of a sudden you're like, this is like a big Trump supporter who has 170,000 Twitter followers. You know what I mean? And I keep discovering new, and it's almost like the Cernoviches have been like pushed out. They're they're like a new generation.
Well, there's a Politico piece about that exact fact. That came out this week. A very good piece of people, not one that I wrote, but one that people should read. But I just want to circle back to Iowa for a sec, because the fact that you said King should go. Now he's running against somebody. There are two races that have been seen as competitive in Iowa for a while: Iowa 1, Iowa 3. And Abby Finkenauer is in Iowa 1 versus Rod Blum, and Cindy Axne is running against David Young in Iowa 3. And they've generally run, campaigns, working across the aisle, getting things done, sticking up for the working man, that kind of thing. Iowa 4, it's J.T. Scholten, and he is a few ticks to the left of them. He's actually said that we should be working towards Medicare for all. I'm not sure if I don't have the exact language correctly. I don't think he's saying single payer now. He's still happy with incremental steps towards it, but he has, I believe, uttered that we should be for that. So he's not necessarily the kind of guy that is a Matt Lewis Democrat. Although I believe he is I think he is a veteran, but maybe I'm wrong on that point. So anyway, but you seem to be willing. Steve King is so horrific. I think it would be better. Yeah, I think it'd be better for the conservative movement and the Republican Party for Steve King to lose. That's my point. And there's this great Twitter feed. I'd like to know who runs this. The Reagan Battalion. Have you seen these guys, Bill? I have, and I actually got a bit of a little Twitter fracas with them the other day, although I generally like what they do. Yeah. I don't know who's behind it. It's been rumored that some former Rubio people, I don't know for a fact, but they seem to do good work. They took down Milo Yiannopoulos, so that's a good deed that they did. And they have said that Steve King, that they normally don't support Democrats, but they would support the Democrat versus Steve King. So, and I did say NRCC has pulled their funding for Steve King. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they think they don't need the funding. I think we need to start. There needs to be consequences for people, right? And I'm not saying that people don't deserve second chances, but how many chances does Steve King deserve? I mean, this is not he just anyway.
There needs to be consequences. And look, that's why this guy who tried to take down Robert Mueller, if in fact the reporting is accurate, I hope they throw the book at him.
Sorry, J.D. Schulten was not a veteran. He is a former baseball player.
That's a Matt Lewis Democrat, if I ever heard of one. Was he ever involved in rodeos?
I don't know.
Because that's another criteria I demand.
Anyway, we did say we were going to do some predictions for this show.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you're willing to do that still.
Well, let me say this. I am willing to do anything. Number one. Number two, I have to say, generally, I don't think much has changed in the past week in terms of my predictions of the overall outcome, except to say I am much more gloomy this week. And I don't know what that means, right? So, like, my guess is that Trump needs to turn out his base, and they're watching Fox, and they are convinced that an invasion is about to take place in Brownsville imminently, or Del Rio or wherever, and so they may still be fired up. I can tell you that coming off of the Kavanaugh hearings, coming off of I'm trying to think of the news. I was more positive, but since I feel like things took a turn with the bombings, or the attempted bombings, and the shooting in Pittsburgh, the synagogue, in Pittsburgh, and the bombing. For me, I feel like there was a shift, and the momentum shifted. But again, I'm probably not the typical Trump voter that he needs to turn out. They may still be totally locked in and excited.
Well, to your original point, all this, that anything that fires up the right is good for the Republicans because the left is already fired up. So Kavanaugh wasn't helpful to the left because they were already fired up. It just agitated the right. And it could be that just like in other types of mass shooting situations, when the left assumes this is going to be good for us. I mean, and I'm not saying that the left is looking at these things strictly in political terms and not caring about the tragedy of it, but in terms of our political discussion. So I think, like after Parkland, well, this has to mean that there's going to be momentum for gun control. Look how horrific Parkland is. And obviously that was not the case. Oh, we're going to ban bump stocks now after Vegas. How could you not ban bump stocks?
Right.
Obviously we haven't done that. So can Trump still get the right fired up to say, look, they're playing this same old song and trying to blame me for the bombing? How crazy is that?
Yeah. I have to say, I think my gloominess this week may just be a sadness about America in general, not a sadness about Republican fortunes. But I will say, and this is more navel-gazing than anything else, when you've been doing this, I'm not an old man, but I'm not a young man anymore, and when you've been doing this as long as we have, there's a feeling about autumn, right? The World Series was playing and Halloween was around the corner. There's a feeling around election time, and it takes me back to my youth. And there was a brief time where I was starting to get kind of the excitement of elections, of midterm, people out going door to door, canvassing the neighborhood. It's kind of a romantic almost notion. And that was, this past week has taken that away. And it's much more serious now. So this may be more of a Matt thing than a political thing. But I have to say, I will say this in terms of my prediction. A week ago, I said, I think Democrats, I think Republicans will hold the Senate, and I think Democrats will take the House. I'm actually more convinced that's true now. Like last week, I thought last week I was thinking maybe Republicans can pull this off and hold the House. Maybe if things keep going their way. And I think I'm less I'm probably even more locked into the conventional wisdom now that Democrats will take the House and that Republicans will hold the Senate.
I mean, it's tough to do, very confident predicting, because I just think we have much weaker data when it comes to House and Senate races. The races aren't polled as frequently. A presidential race is polled, up the wazoo, and even though some of the state-by-state polling was off in 2016, the national polling was quite accurate as far as in terms of national popular vote was concerned. Yeah. So, particularly on the House races, there are a handful of House races that have had maybe, 2, 3, 4 polls of credit from credible pollsters.
Well, the good news is there's a lot of polling on the Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz race.
Right. I mean, there's that one race. So you have a lot of numbers there. But beyond that, you don't have races with a lot of numbers. And so it's very easy to be, even if you might see 3 numbers for the Arizona race, think, well, there's 3 numbers there, and they all seem roughly, slight edge for Sinema, so it must be Sinema's going to win. But I don't know if that's really true. And there's plenty of races where there's barely any data at all.
Speaking of Arizona, I just saw somebody was on Twitter saying, I think CNN did a poll that shows Sinema's winning, but there was some discrepancy about how many votes they think are going to come from Maricopa County or something. Sometimes there was some polling about a month ago where the universe was based on census data, which is unlikely to actually be the turnout, to be the turnout model. So anyway, lies.
There's always variations in methodologies, and if you have 100 polls about something with different methodologies, that's why you can lump them all into an average and think, okay, this is a rough sense of where things are going to go. Now you got a couple of polls like this, and if one methodology is way off the mark, then the whole thing's off the mark. But I will say, just to speak of Arizona for a bit, this maybe speak to your sense of momentum shifts. 2 weeks ago, Sinema was being hammered for being a left-wing, activist and saying things that were seemingly anti-American. And I'm not on the ground.
That's a good point, Bill. She was on defense for 2 straight weeks, and it feels like that has shifted.
I'm not in Arizona. I don't know what the day-to-day is, but certainly the national news is not covering that. I think we talked about it past show. I would say, no one's more on message than Kyrsten Sinema.
Yeah,
she is a machine, and it could be she just rode that out. I'm focused on what Arizonans care about. McSally's running a nasty campaign, and McSally, I can only flog this horse so much. I saw a clip of McSally. I forget what she was being asked about. She was being asked about something about Trump that she didn't want to talk about, and she said to the press, "Can we know what something that really matters here, like the caravan?" Just begging for a caravan question. So I think the national conversation does make it harder sometimes at the state local level to talk about things that you want to talk about, and I've seen a couple of polls that now show a reduced margin for Sinema, but still a lead for Sinema. So it would suggest that she's weathered that aspect of the campaign.
Actually, I think you're right. That's a very smart observation. I think that Sinema was a microcosm of what I had been sensing and the shift.
Now, still overall, the same. Heitkamp's numbers are still terrible. O'Rourke is still behind Cruz, though maybe there's a little bit of tightening there. Bredesen hasn't had a poll where he's ahead in a while, though I think there's one poll where it was roughly tied, but a couple others still have Blackburn ahead. So, McCaskill's in Missouri is dicey. Donnelly in Indiana is dicey, although I've seen some polls where he's still ahead. And Jackie Rosa in Nevada going against Dean Heller, she is, I saw one poll where she was ahead by a few, but still numbers where it's dead heat or Heller's ahead. So there's still a lot of uncertainty there, and a lot of things have to break right for Democrats to actually win the Senate. They'd have to hold, they can only lose one of their seats, and they'd have to pick up Arizona and Nevada and get Tennessee or Texas, which is all pretty hard. So I would still. So I'm with conventional wisdom that Republicans keep the Senate and Democrats win the House. And I think the bigger question is, what's that margin of the House? Is it a real big blue wave? Are there going to be races that folks who are on the lean R or likely R columns on the various handicappers ratings, is a big blue wave going to carry those folks? You're going to get 50 net gain for Democrats, or is it going to be more in the 30 to 35 range where they need 20, a net of 23, so they get that margin, but it's a tight margin, and that might make a really big difference in how Trump and Republicans respond to things. Because if it's a really tiny margin, and it is, I mean, any margin of Democrats is going to be because Democrats won in Trump districts. But if it's a bigger margin, one, you have to pick off a lot more Democrats. If Trump was going to say, all right, it's a new day, let's have a real infrastructure week. Let's dust off the infrastructure bill. Let's pick off 50 plus Democrats who won where I won and show the country that I'm getting stuff done. If he had an inkling to do that, a smaller margin is more enticing. It seems more feasible.
Yeah.
If it's a bigger margin, it seems less feasible. And I also think a bigger margin could this might seem a little paradoxical. It would mean winning in more deeper red districts, but I think it also could carry more harder left candidates who you would think shouldn't be competitive in those districts. Most of the Democrats running on the House side in redder areas are not in the Ocasio-Cortez mold. They're running as bipartisan pragmatists. They're not running on single payer. But there are a handful that are more left-wing, are on the record being for Medicare for all, whether as a long-term goal or as a short-term goal. And they might get swept up in a big blue wave and carried over the finish line. And that could, just to sort of bring this to a fine point, if, I had a piece in Politico last week, 15 races the Democrats are going to be watching that will determine how they run in 2020. You got three Democratic nominees in Trump won districts. I think I said they were toss up or lean R, that are forthrightly for single payer. Not just that they've said it occasionally, that they are defending it in the final days of the campaign. I mean, even those three aren't running ads saying rah rah single payer. Kara Eastman that's Kara Eastman, Randy Bryce. Kara Eastman's Nebraska 2, Randy Bryce, Wisconsin 1, and Joe Radinovich, Minnesota 8. Those are the three most squarely for single payer in Trump 1 Republican held. Actually, Minnesota's not Republican held, but Trump 1 districts. Kara Eastman has an ad where she says, I'm for affordable health care for all. She doesn't say single payer or Medicare for all in the ad. But in a debate with her opponent, Don Bacon, when she's asked about single payer, she fully defends it. There are other people, like, say, Jared Golden in Maine 2, who they have on their website that Medicare for all is a good long-term goal, but when he gets pushed on it in the debate, he doesn't make a big defense of it. He talks about how he's for public option and how the Republican wants to take away pre-existing condition protections and that sort of thing. So, Kara Eastman, Radinovich is being seen as almost counted out in Minnesota 8. Eastman is considered a bigger long shot in Nebraska 2. And Randy Bryce, arguably, is kind of fading in Wisconsin 1. He's getting hammered for his arrest record and things like that. He's got an ad where his brother is attacking him for using anti-cop rhetoric. So if even one of those three gets carried over in a big blue wave, you have, 40 other Democrats who are not running on single-payer campaigns, but you will see single-payer advocates saying, hey, Kara Eastman won Nebraska 2. This proves it works. And you got a whole bunch of other Democrats in blue areas for single payer too. You should be pushing single payer right now. More likely there'll be juice for that in a bigger blue wave than a smaller blue wave.
Well, that'll be a conversation to be continued for our post-election DMZ show, which I'm sure people are waiting with bated breath for us to do our post-analysis.
So do you have any particular races that you've been most focused on that are most intriguing to you?
Oh, let's see. I have to be honest. I think, I know you're, someone calling me. What's going on? I feel like pre-Trump, the midterms were like more. I mean, I remember these races like Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, and what's going to happen. Just there were town hall meetings before the midterms, and like it seems like you had to sort of be on top of like these states and know the nuances like of the public policy debates. To me, it seems like whatever Trump is tweeting about today is really overriding it. I mean, I think I would say I'm interested in Arizona, kind of as a bellwether.
Arizona Senate.
Yeah, Arizona Senate. Yeah, because I think like North Dakota's done. I think Texas is done. I mean, obviously, if Beto wins, that's huge news, but I think it's done. I feel like Arizona is kind of a race that's very telling. So I'm keeping an eye on that. I think Nevada is interesting just because, is it Heller out there who was just kind of a survivor? That guy finds a way to win every time. And I think it's more to do with him and his operation than it is anything else. The Republicans should study what he does out there in Nevada.
Well, there's one thing about Nevada that I think I have a piece that's not published yet, so it still needs to get its edits. Michael Avenatti said something the other day that got a lot of controversy, that Democrats need a white man to beat Trump. That if it's not a white man who's nominated, they won't beat Trump. Obviously got a ton of blowback for that. And he even said, they didn't quote me correctly, I was quite out of context, released the full transcript. It was in Time Magazine, they released a partial transcript. And you can see Avenatti is trying to be very careful about what he's saying.
I like how he demanded the transcript. I didn't know that we had that ability. Next time I'm quoted, I'm going to demand the entire transcript be released.
Avenatti is actually saying something that was said at times in 2008. That we have to win this election, and look, John Edwards, he can go anywhere in the country, and look, the country just might not be ready for a Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, and even Edwards himself, he wouldn't say that in those terms, but he would say I'm the most electable, I can go to every corner of the country, and people would infer what he was talking about. So
but you could have said that about Michael Dukakis too, or you know what I mean, like. Anyway, I'm not trying to make excuses for John Edwards, right. But there is an argument that you could be like a northeastern liberal politician who's not going to play well in certain regions. As it turns out, Barack Obama played very well in a lot of the country.
Well, the fact that Dukakis was from Greek immigrant roots, was something that was talked about at the time. And there was an old SNL skit they did. They did fake ads for Bush.
This is John Lovitz, probably.
Well, this was a narrator. It wasn't with the impersonators, but they were like, George Bush, his family came from the Mayflower, but Michael Dukakis, and then you see the flag of Greece. Vote Bush. He's whiter. So it wasn't. You're totally not discussed at the time. But of course, Edwards didn't get the nomination. Obama did win, and so for a lot of Democrats, that's an outdated discussion. What Avenatti was trying to say was, I'm not saying women and minorities can't win any election. I'm saying against Trump. Trump's a specific case, and he knows how to push these buttons in the country, and you're not going to be able to defeat that with someone who's not a white male. Now, I'm not saying that is accurate, but I'm saying that's the argument.
Yeah,
I'd
like to see Oprah test that theory.
Because I think that theory might get tested. There's a whole bunch of women might test that theory. We got a lot of women, a lot of non-white politicians who are going to run for president, but we have a lot of women and non-white politicians running now in this midterm election. And granted, they're not against Trump, so I'm not going to say, look, I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about Trump. But Trump hovers over this whole race. For many people, this is a referendum on Trump, and Trump tactics are present in a lot of races. Yeah. Just as
I'm just thinking real quick. The only two Republicans who've ever really stood up to Trump and lived to tell about it are Carly Fiorina and Nikki Haley. If you think about it.
Well, Fiorina didn't beat Trump. Trump.
Well, no.
Trump attacked her face, and she didn't win.
No, but I think she held her own, and so did Nikki Haley, more against Trump than any of the men who went up against Trump, in my opinion.
I mean, Haley tried to drag Rubio over the finish line in South Carolina, failed, saluted to Donald Trump, and became the ambassador to the UN. So it's a bit of a mixed record there as far as standing up to Trump. But just to give it a hypothetical here, let's say that Phil Bredesen wins Tennessee against a female candidate, while Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp, and Jackie Rosen lose to male Republican candidates. That I don't know if Avenatti is going to go spike a football, but some could say, well, maybe he's got a point there. Maybe we got a problem here, and we need a white man to deal with this right now. You got a lot of women.
It's about time they finally turned to white men for president.
Right.
How long has it been? Oh, that's right.
Now,
now.
We have a slew of women running for House races, and it's not going to be a shutout. Some women are going to win, many of them against white men, and we also have some key races involving people of color running in predominantly white areas. When we have Antonio Delgado in New York 19, we have Andrew Gillum running for governor of Florida. We have Stacey Abrams in Georgia, Colin Allred, Texas, I think it's 32. So we got various test cases going on. And so at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to say women just can't win or people of color just can't win, because someone's going to win. Someone's win, someone's going to lose. I think the smarter analysis to make at the end of this process, I don't think you should completely dismiss the question Avenatti is raising. I don't agree with this conclusion, but if you're going to say racism and sexism exist in society, which most of the left would agree with, then you have to figure out how you're going to deal with racism and sexism in terms of your elections. You don't want to be blind to those challenges. I don't think that means you should say, well, don't even bother nominating a woman or a person of color, because that's one, inherently defeatist, and two, you might miss out on a good candidate like, say, a Barack Obama. And even Hillary Clinton came pretty darn close. The bigger question is, what did they do to overcome those obstacles? Are there lessons you can learn from the 2018 data that might inform you in 2020? And this happened. Deval Patrick, there wasn't a slew of black candidates that went in 2016, but there was one that did, Deval Patrick, in Massachusetts. And we say, oh, well, that's just Massachusetts. He's the only Democratic governor in Massachusetts since Michael Dukakis. It's not easy to become a governor of Massachusetts as a Democrat, because there are voters that like a check on the legislature. Deval's the only one to have picked that lock. David Axelrod was his consultant, and the themes that he used in that campaign, Axelrod said at the time, was the model for how Obama ran. They learned lessons from that campaign that they applied to the Obama presidential race. So I talk, once my piece gets published, I name some of the people who you want to look at here. I couldn't name them all, it'd be too long a piece. But look at the women who do beat white men and the women that don't beat white men. See if there are differences in how they ran. And in the case of people of color, you've one contrast here of note. Gillum in Florida, he's going at Ron DeSantis saying, I'm not saying DeSantis is a racist, but the racists think he's a racist. That's pretty confrontational. That's not the way Barack Obama won in 2008 or Deval Patrick won in 2006. And Antonio Delgado, who is probably facing the most blatantly racist barrage of ads of anyone in the campaign. And I think there are whiffs of racism and sexism in a lot of these races, but the New York 19 is just completely unapologetic and unabashed. And at times, Delgado has called that out as race baiting. But what he's mostly doing is running ads where he's around a lot of white people. Because the ads against him are like, this New York City rapper or this New York City values, they're not our values. He's not one of us. His ads are him talking to a bunch of white people at a kitchen table saying, he's one of us. He gets us. And now with Joe Biden saying, I come from a working class family and I know people like Altano Delgado. He gets us. So is that the better way to deal with it, or is Gilliam's the better way to deal with it? And it's not quite apples and oranges because Florida is more diverse than New York 19, but they are examples to look at and explore and dissect. How should Democrats, deal with Trump? Is it galvanizing a diverse coalition, or is it picking off white working class, or some combination of the two? This is the information we're going to get out of 2018.
I like it. It's sort of a test run, and you can, apply those lessons. So, yeah.
And I wonder to what extent you could do this on the Republican side. I haven't dissected it enough, but I do think there is variation on people running as Foursquare Trump loyalists, or people trying to let's talk about the caravan as much as I can. Or people saying, let's talk about that tax cut. Why don't we talk about the tax cut more? It's helping the economy in my district. Or people like, Brian Fitzpatrick, who's running as a moderate. There's not a lot of them, but, I'm working.
You know what hasn't worked? Jeff Flake. That hasn't worked.
Well, it didn't work in a primary. But what works in the general? And I think that you see a handful of Republicans saying, even a guy, Minnesota 2, Jason Lewis is the incumbent there, and he's a first-term incumbent. He was called Mini Trump, Minnesota's Mini Trump, in 2016 because he had a radio talk show. He said women who are fighting for contraception coverage, are not thinking or non-thinking. He said that there are more examples of blacks that kill whites than KKK people that kill blacks. That's how his talk show was. He's running today as saying, they can't pin that on me. I'm getting things done. I'm working across the aisle on sentencing reform. They can't call me a right-wing lunatic. And the Democrat, Angie Craig, which is a rematch of 2016, she's not emphasizing his incendiary comments either. She's saying he's a creature of Washington who's bought and paid for by the special interests who took away your pre-existing condition, who wants to take away your pre-existing condition protections. There's another race in New Jersey 11, which is Mickey Sherrill versus Jay Weber. Mickey Sherrill's a Navy pilot, Democrat. This is a Trump won district, but not by a little, but it's a very affluent district and a very college-educated district. So they are bringing up, Jay Weber voted against equal pay for women. Jay Weber, doesn't support abortion rights. They're doing that in that district. You don't see it as much in the Midwest districts that are not as college educated. So there are variations in how the Democrats are handling the Republicans and how the Republicans are positioning themselves based on those districts. So I haven't done this full analysis on the Republican side, but I think Republicans should look at who survived the blue wave. What did they do that was different than the other ones? That would be important information to know.
Again, you've just written my next column, Bill. Thanks again. I'm glad I do this show. You just keep pitching the ideas, my man.
Should we tie it off there? Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I think we're good.
All right.
I mean, they've already gotten their money's worth,
So I'm going to figure out what I'm actually emceeing an election night party here in Northampton. So anyone in the area wants to see me in action.
Yeah.
It's going to be at the World War II Club here in Northampton. The Democratic Party, but I'll be tracking the results. I do have to do an all-nighter for Politico that night, so I got to figure when I step off the stage and start writing. But I haven't decided if I'm going to do like a Facebook Live thing or not during that. I'm thinking about it.
Hardest hit once again. Bill Scher, hardest hit.
Hey, I emceed the 2016 election night party. That was true. That was true pain.
Yeah, no. I mean, we forget about the heroes out there who are covering these elections, who have to stay awake to see who wins in Nevada, who wins in Arizona.
The race I'm most interested in, I know the least about, is the Alaska House race. There's a bit of polling that shows it being a close race. This is Don Young, So it's, he's the congressman for the entire state. He's been there for over 40 years.
I did my dissertation on this race. I'm aware.
I think it's Alyssa 11. And so interesting about her, she's like a Bernie Sanders. Not that she's a Democratic socialist, but she wins the Democratic primary and then ditches the Democratic line to run as an independent. So she's listed as an independent, but she has Democratic backing. And you also have the governor's race where the independent governor left the race to endorse the Democrat because all the polls showed they were splitting the vote and the Republican was going to win with a plurality. And this is a former Republican who became an independent to win the governor's race 4 years ago. So does the consolidation around the Democrat for governor, does that buoy the House candidate? We're not going to know probably until Wednesday. But I do think that's a very interesting race.
Indeed. All right. Well, we'll be back here, talking about it in a week.
Well, probably Thursday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do Wednesday.
Give or take. What do you want to plug, Bill?
I already talked about my Politico stuff. I also got a Real Clear Politics piece from Monday. What happens if you vote for a Democrat? What really happens in the House or the Senate if Democrats win? It's not the Trump caricature. It's divided government. What could that really look like? I talk about that in that piece.
So I'm trying to get away from politics as much as I can. I just did a really cool podcast about this book called Then They Came for Me. You've probably heard that famous confession. And it's about the life of Martin Niemöller, who was a pastor who actually voted for Nazis and eventually turned against Hitler and ended up going to Dachau. And he is the author of that famous poem because literally when they came for the communists and the trade unionists and the Jews, he did nothing. And then they came for him and nobody was there. So I talked to the author of that book on the podcast. Fascinating conversation. And it's really interesting because it's nuanced, right? This is not Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This is not a guy who was like heroic from day one. This is a guy who was supporting of the regime, who ended up changing his mind and over time. I'm also talking to our friend David Petrugia about his book TR's Last War, and in preparation, I listened to your fabulous new podcast
who wore it best.
Well, we'll throw it out there to the audience to say which of us gave the best interview. And I am about to talk to Henry Olsen, who's a very smart center-right political analyst and numbers cruncher kind of dude. So we will get into some rank punditry and midterm conversation. So that'll hopefully get it out of my system for a couple of days until we meet again.
All right.
It's on Matt Lewis in the News, the podcast.
I'll see you on the other side, Matt Lewis.
All right, buddy. Godspeed.
Take care.